You wake up to find yourself sitting in the exact room which you are currently sitting in, only you know, though you don't know how you know, that there is nothing outside this room. Instead, there's a man's voice explaining to you that reality is no longer what you thought it was 30 seconds ago. You listen as he, for your convenience, proceeds to explain this new reality.
Today you woke up for the first time. You're in the middle of the woods. You don't know what woods are or why you are here, nor even what a you is, but you have a voice in your head giving you a thought, a direction, something to respond to. That is what it means to be born as a conscious, living thing, after all. It is also the beginning of Slay the Princess. The visual novel Slay the Princess is a game about life versus death. It is a game about authority versus freedom. It is a game about preservation versus change. It is a game about stagnation versus growth. It is a game about the fundamental nature of a person and the uncaring nature of the universe itself. Slay the Princess is a game that on its surface appears to be a dating sim with an edgy, violent twist. Yet within its subtleties, within the tidbits of insight that you might have missed from your personal run through the story, lies what may have been the most profound game to release in 2023. This video will seek to expose the deep philosophical conflict at the heart of Slay the Princess. This video may spoil every part of the game's story, or, if I make the wrong choices, if I think about this incorrectly, this video may be completely meaningless. With all of that in mind, as we progress, no matter what happens, I want you to remember that this is a love story. Chapter 1. Characters. There are exactly 4 characters. First, there is the narrator. They are the first voice we hear when the game begins. They are the animus to everything that happens. By some means, never explained to us, they have created this space. A space in which abstract concepts, the laws of the universe, may be abstracted and personified. The narrator has made reality itself into a story, and thus the laws of the universe, now as characters capable of thought and feelings, may be reasoned with. The uncaring universe may, with luck, be convinced to start caring, but that's too risky, too many variables. The narrator thus seeks to create an end to his story quickly, before there is a chance for things to go wrong. The next character is us. We are the long quiet, a god that represents endurance, persistence, stillness. We are the reason things stay the way they are, why monuments stand throughout the ages, why an object at rest stays at rest. We are the very concept of permanence. Yet by the power of this story, the long quiet is given a task to slay the princess. It must act, and through action, create a change in the world outside. The third character is, of course, the titular princess. She is the shifting mound, a god that represents movement, transformation, and expansion. She is the reason things are born, grow, die, and are recycled into something new. She is the reason towers fall and the reason stars explode. She is the very concept of change. But by the power of this story, the shifting mound is trapped. She must wait to be acted upon by the long quiet. Through inaction, the narrator seeks to secure and protect the world outside from the shifting mound. Lastly, the one character who is never present but offers the motivation for the rest. Life itself. All the people, plants, and animals on the outside of this desperate experiment. Someday, it will all come to an end. Countless life-eradicating challenges lay in our future. Global warming making the weather inhospitable to life itself. An asteroid capable of eradicating the planet. The explosion of the sun. The slow collapse of the galaxy into a supermassive black hole. Even if life finds a way to survive any number of cosmic destructions, eventually the universe itself will experience heat death. Everything will be spread evenly and cold and so far away from everything else that no light nor matter will ever interact. A shifting mound of matter and energy rushing toward an infinitely long quiet. Yet what if none of that had to happen? What if you could preserve everything? What if you could just press pause on the universe right now? Would you? Should you? Look at your screen and choose.
The anxiety of suddenly being asked to decide the fate of the universe was too much for you. Your heart experiences sudden cardiac arrest, the lights go dark, and you die.
Chapter 2. Vox Personae.
Right, perhaps that was a bit too much to handle all at once. Let's try for a bottom-up approach this time. You wake up to find yourself sitting in the exact room which you are currently sitting in. There's a man's voice explaining to you that reality is no longer what you thought it was 30 seconds ago. But that's okay, because you get to decide who you want to be and what you do from here on out. He starts to explain your options.
Slay the Princess does not lay the entire universe at your feet, at least not at first. You are asked only to be yourself and respond to the situation in the way you see fit. As a visual novel with branching narrative paths, Slay the Princess allows you to dictate the course of the story by choosing what you would like to do and what you would like to say based on a short list of options. What makes this visual novel stand out is that your past choices curve back onto you, not only by changing the events of the cyclical story, but changing how it attempts to influence your choices going forward. The Long Quiet has 11 distinct voices that represent the player's characteristics, motivations, and personality based on their past choices. These voices are the Broken, Contrarian, Cold, Cheated, Hero, Hunter, Opportunist, Paranoid, Stubborn, Smitten, and Skeptic. Each voice appears at the beginning of your next cycle through the story. Each voice responds to and converses with the other voices and the narrator. Like the player statistics of Disco Elysium, each voice has a distinct function and personality. Each voice has the explicit goal of encouraging you, the player, to choose the same sort of options that you chose before to bring about that voice's role in the story. The hero will continuously motivate you to save the princess. The Cold will quietly encourage you to dismiss lengthy conversation and get to the stabbing. The Smitten will remind you to ignore the Twitch chat because the princess is very attractive and it's much more fun to be a simp, actually. Regardless of which voice develops from your choices, their function remains the same. The Long Quiet is a character that embodies permanence. They are the god of staying exactly the same as you always have been, and thus every voice that develops from your choices is the Long Quiet convincing itself to do exactly the same thing as before, to avoid change and prioritize permanence. The Writhing Mound, on the other hand, has a different motivation. The princess also responds to the player's choices with the exact opposite goal. After being introduced in Chapter 1, the princess can appear as 20 distinct princesses. Those personae in Chapter 2 are the Stranger, Witch, Tower, Adversary, Beast, Damsel, Nightmare, Prisoner, Razor, and Spectre. The persona changes again in Chapter 3 as the Wild, the Thorn, Apotheosis, Fury, Eye of the Needle, Den, Grey, Moment of Clarity, and the Wraith. Some of these vessels even have variations depending on your choices in finding their chapters. The princesses of the Writhing Mound take on a variety of different appearances and demeanors, based on your previous choices, as the game attempts to predict what sort of personality the player is more likely to have strong feelings towards. The goal of the princesses is to get the player to choose in a different manner than they chose previously, doing so in order to get the Long Quiet to enact change on her behalf, to bring an end to this story that has the Writhing Mound trapped. In presenting the motivations of the Long Quiet and the Writhing Mound as character personalities to the player, the game Slay the Princess constitutes the same dynamic as the experiment created by the narrator in the story, a way to intuitively relate to and thus engage with the abstract ontological laws of reality. The game Slay the Princess thus serves diegetically the same experience for the players as the story serves for the character called the Long Quiet. Character personalities in this game are functions that gradually prepare the player to think abstractly about what sort of things they value and what decisions they would make if they had to. Look at the screen right now and choose. Your time is almost up. You need to choose, and I hope for all of our sakes you choose correctly.
You wandered back and forth in a nearby desert until your legs gave out from exhaustion. As you lay there, your breath going dry with each exhale, you begin to regret your indecision. Without your noticing, one exhale becomes your last, and you die.
Chapter 3. Is this the end? There are 3 primary endings to Slay the Princess that I would like to explain. with variations depending on which princesses were returned to the Writhing Mound. Before the Long Quiet makes their decision on the fate of the universe, she and him do battle, no longer the bloody conflicts of the chapters leading up to the end. Instead, it is a conflict of values. It is a conversation, a dialogue. The violence has given way to philosophy. Before we can begin to understand the endings, we must understand what values we are weighing, the internal conflicts and misgivings that the Writhing Mound considers while awaiting the Long Quiet's final choice. The Shifting Mound's argument begins with the contention that the Long Quiet and herself were once the same being, the implication being that we should not be opposed to each other in this moment. She balances what we have been told about her experience, that she is death and destruction, alongside a positive value, that death gives existence meaning. The Shifting Mound's second contention, that your roles, the entirety of the universe, is beyond thought and comprehension, that we do not need to think in terms of people, their thoughts, and their feelings. She is suggesting that we do exactly the opposite of what the narrator's experiment was designed to do, to cause the laws of physics, to cause gods to feel and experience empathy. The third contention is an encouragement to avoid doubting her, by alluding to the philosophy of René Descartes, whose method of doubting everything to come to a rationalist account for being itself marks the beginning of modern philosophy, and compares that beginning to a willing re-entry into Plato's allegory of the cave, where knowledge was meant to be the path toward understanding the world and sharing it with others. The fourth contention is to make the Long Quiet realize that progress and change is the only reason he has grown capable of choosing to abandon her. How could he choose to reject the very reason for his own ascendance? The arguments that the Writhing Mound presents the player will be determined by which princesses the player encountered on their way to this final moment, but they all lead to the same conclusion, that everything you have done, everything you became, and everything you learned about yourself was because of her, because of change. Fear is the only thing that keeps you from embracing her and becoming something new. I'm not going to kill you this time. I think you understand what we're doing here. You are ready to choose. In the first ending, titled, "And What Happens Next?", the Long Quiet continues the task of slaying the princess in the form of the Writhing Mound, but the voice of the hero steps in, reminding you that in some way the princess that you loved and tried to free is still in there. You forcibly reset the cycle. You reconstruct the narrator's experiment, the cabin in the woods, and descend the stairs to find the princess. Together, you and the princess decide not to destroy the narrator's construct. Without the narrator to reset you, the experiment can just exist. But what does an ending like that even mean for the universe? Beyond that door, there is no permanence nor change. There is no time and no untime. This ending is about freedom. It is about embracing the irrational uncertainty of not understanding what comes next, of not understanding the greater context for the meaning of your life, yet taking action regardless.
In this ending, we accept ignorance, because people can face the unknown with confidence so long as we have something to love. But what if you didn't have to face the unknown? What if you didn't have to guess or worry or even think?
In the second ending, titled A New and Unending Dawn, the Long Quiet chooses to, once and for all, slay the princess. You leave the cabin alone, surrounded by the swirling textures that are you, realizing that this construct left by the echoes of the narrator merely surrounds the wings of our own monstrous body. As the Long Quiet unfurls over the universe, we are treated to the image of a star, but the star is still. A solar flare hangs suspended, no longer expanding. Each of our voices returns and comments on their approval of this new reality. Infinite permanence. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to contradict. Nothing to question. Nothing to love.
You'll get over it.
In the third ending, titled There Are No Endings, we choose to escape this reality by uniting with the Writhing Mound, once again discovering the construct surrounding our body, and that we have been trapped inside an unchanging moment with the very concept of change itself. Those wings break away, shattering the construct when the writhing mound takes our hand. Gazing out over the sum total of reality, the image is presented to us, metaphorically, as a kaleidoscope of geometry superimposed on top of growing grass lifting fresh dewdrops. Change and permanence are reunited as time being something that is not absolute, but relative. Time can only be understood as the rate at which things change in comparison to the unchanging, something which changes faster or slower. In this ending, the long quiet chooses to embrace change as a part of itself. The present moment must go on, or else the very nature of life, to grow, to love, and to die, will never be experienced again. In the end, Slay the Princess is a love story. A story about learning to love the universe, about learning the frailty, the uncertainty, the passage of time that we have left.
Perhaps instead we should learn to love this strange relationship. Impermanence, things that are here, consistent, predictable, a blink of an eye when compared to the life of the universe, but nonetheless add up to that infinitely large universe. An infinite universe of endless possibility which will also come to an end. Reality but a blink of an eye when compared with the nothingness to follow. Cherish this rare moment we have together, and stay true.